Of all of the live-action Spider-Man films, Spider-Man No Way Home leaves me the most disappointed whenever I rewatch it. I think the plot is held together with strings, and I don't think that they treated the returning characters with respect. With there being no worse example than Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin. It's such a shame, because after 19 years, this guy has still got it. He has all the energy that you would expect for a character like Goblin, and he brings a lot of energy to the role and really sells the performance. But as for writing and the characterization of Green Goblin and Norman Osborn, it leaves a lot to be desired compared to how he was in Spider-Man 1. So let's break down every scene with Norman in No Way Home and discuss how he was character assassinated. The first scene we see of Goblin is his introduction on the bridge, and I'm happy to say that this scene is pretty much perfect. It's only 20 seconds long, but it definitely sells the insanity of the Green Goblin and the destruction that he can bring. It's everywhere from here on out where things go downhill. The next scene that we see of Norman is in the alleyway, where he's trashing and hiding the Green Goblin gear, whilst Goblin himself is mocking him and calling him a coward.
Coward, we have a new world to conquer. You make me sick, hiding in the shadows. Hiding from who you truly are. You can't escape yourself.
This is the first of many scenes in No Way Home that strongly misunderstands the dynamic between Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin. This Jekyll and Hyde dynamic does not work because Goblin himself stated in Spider-Man 1 that he only acts in favor of what Norman Osborn wants.
Bingo. Me. Bringing you what you've always wanted.
Meaning that antagonizing him for wanting something completely different is straight up ridiculous. However, Norman himself is also ruined in this scene because he would not reject Goblin in No Way Home, because in Spider-Man 1 we saw him willingly hold on to the Goblin persona even when he knew that Goblin had done terrible things. And to further prove my point, we need to take a look at Goblin's interaction with Peter and Aunt May at the Feast Center.
I saw Spider-Man in an ad for this place. But you're not him.
As a result of this, we know for a fact that Norman entered the MCU at some point after discovering that Tobey was Spider-Man. Keep this in your head when we're discussing all of the issues with his character later in the video.
Someone's living in my house. Oscorp doesn't exist. My son, sometimes I'm not myself. I'm someone else. And every time he's in control, I can't remember. And now I'm here in this place.
It's pretty obvious from this scene that Norman does not want to stay in the MCU because his entire life has been flipped upside down. Yet later on in the film, Goblin, the guy who brings Norman everything he's always wanted, seals his fate by destroying the box that traps Norman in the MCU forever. This is pretty damning for the Goblin, but let's take a look at the other things that Norman says. Norman's claim that he doesn't remember what he does as the Green Goblin is a lie because we see him replay the events of Strom's death in his head and he willingly covers it up. He also deduces that Peter is Spider-Man based off the same cut on his wrist that Spider-Man had during his battle with the Green Goblin earlier that day. Also, remember when Green Goblin literally says this?
Downplay the innocent with me. You've known all along.
Norman's rant in No Way Home strongly contradicts what happens in Spider-Man 1, and as a result he is blatantly character assassinated in this scene. Especially since you can't make the argument that he's just trying to manipulate Peter, because if that was the case, why would he destroy the Green Goblin mask earlier in the film? He is genuinely in distress over the Green Goblin persona, which is not what happens in Spider-Man 1. I mean, for fuck's sakes, he tries pleading innocence in Spider-Man 1 while simultaneously preparing to trap Spider-Man and kill him. Does this sound like an innocent man at all? We now move on to the scene where Norman Osborn meets the other villains and learns that he died fighting Spider-Man. Norman and the audience know that he dies by his own glider because Sandman literally says it. However, the details on how that happened are not set in stone. As a result of this, Norman should be very aware of the fact that getting information from the future can change what takes place in the past. All Goblin would need to do to avoid his death is to not use his glider to kill Spider-Man, as well as to employ additional preparation and strategy before going into battle with Spider-Man. His plan in Spider-Man 1 almost worked. He had Peter by the balls and would have killed him if he didn't make the mistake of taunting Peter about MJ. With additional information from the future, he should have no issues killing Spider-Man once he returns to his world. This is something that Norman should want, because not only does he not want to stay in the MCU, however, both him and the Goblin are aware of the fact that Spider-Man poses a legitimate danger to him. Green Goblin is supposed to be a great manipulator. He should be on Team Doctor Strange. He should be convincing Peter from the very beginning to encourage Strange to send them all home. He could even try manipulating Peter into believing that he is fully willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good. It's not guaranteed to work, but it's something that Norman would very much try because he doesn't want to stay in the MCU. And he now has additional information that can make him more successful in his endeavors. Yet we see none of this. Norman gets thrown in a cell by Doctor Strange and just begs Peter for help, which is not at all how he would act. We then get this very strange interaction with Peter and Norman later at the condo.
If you need a job and you're willing to commute to another universe.
Once again, if Norman was actually in character in this movie, this is something he 100% would never want. I don't care if it's a different version of Spider-Man, he knows that Spider-Man poses a danger to him. As far as we're aware, Spider-Man is the only superhero in the Raimi-verse, and as a result, killing him would make Goblin free to do whatever he wants. Green Goblin might be insane and an anarchist, however, he is not dumb by any means. He's very intelligent and crafty, and this is something he would actively avoid if possible. Not to mention, the prospect of being cured should worry Norman, because he would be losing the Goblin persona, the guy who supposedly gives him everything he always wanted. We then get this interaction where Peter's spider sense is somehow able to detect a personality shift in Norman. This scene is actually pretty cool, and it could have been really good, but unfortunately with how No Way Home treats the Goblin and Norman Osborn, it just comes across as really weird. It's as though MCU Peter can detect the evil side of Norman manifesting, which is bullshit because Norman is by no means an innocent man on his own and he has evil inside of him. Not to mention that Norman knows what Goblin does, so how the hell is this even possible? From this point forward, Goblin is fully in control for the rest of the movie up until he's finally cured. Not only does this make a more boring villain, since at no point does he swap between Goblin and Norman to try trap Peter by manipulating him with his two personas. However, his interactions with MCU Peter is very odd, to say the least.
Strong enough to have it all?
Too weak to take it!
Your weakness, Peter, is morality. Can't you feel it?
Goblin seems more insistent on corrupting MCU Peter above all else, which is similar to what he did with Tobey's Peter, but he only tried corrupting that Peter for self-preservation reasons. Goblin knew that Tobey's Spider-Man posed a legitimate danger to him, and as a result he wanted to manipulate him to the dark side because it benefits Norman. He did this for the benefit of his own survival, yet in No Way Home he is perfectly okay with the idea of throwing his life away and literally dying, if it means breaking MCU Peter. You can see the contradictions in how he goes after both versions of Aunt May. He goes after Raimi Aunt May to try break Tobey's spirit so that it becomes more satisfying to kill him. But with MCU Peter, he kills that version of Aunt May to try convince MCU Peter to kill Goblin, which is completely contradictory to Spider-Man 1. Green Goblin is massively character assassinated for this, and it only gets worse the next time we see him after all of the villains are cured. Literally nothing about this scene makes sense in the slightest. All three Spider-Men and Doc Ock would have destroyed the Goblin blades. The three Spider-Men should have been fast enough to intercept Goblin and prevent him from grabbing the box. Goblin's glider should be incapable of slicing through Doc Ock's arms since they are resistant to chainsaws. And finally, I don't believe that a pumpkin bomb would be capable of destroying a relic that can contain a spell that is a threat to the fucking multiverse. And like we went over earlier, Norman Osborn doesn't want to stay in the MCU. So why the fuck does Green Goblin want to? Goblin is just an extension of Norman. He's basically Norman's inhibitions brought to life. Not only does Goblin seal his own fate by doing this, however, I'm not sure why he doesn't just immediately kill Tom's Spider-Man when he's hanging off his glider. Like, sure, you're insane and you may have a death wish, but this is taking the piss a little bit, mate. Like, it's pretty obvious in Spider-Man 1 you did not want to die. Goblin thinks that Peter is going to kill him, and as a result he tries tricking him into thinking there's an innocent man beneath the mask and that it was all Goblin's fault the entire time.
The Goblin killed. I had nothing to do with it.
This was a very smart strategy for Norman, and it could very well have worked if not for the Spider-Sense. Yet when Goblin is defeated in No Way Home, he still taunts MCU Peter into killing him.
She was there because of you. You are the one that killed her.
Green Goblin doesn't want to die, and as a result, him constantly taunting Peter to kill him is antithetical to his character. And it only gets worse when he's cured and when Norman is back in the picture.
What have I done?
This is not at all how Norman would react. It's established in Spider-Man 1 that Norman is resentful and spiteful when things don't go his way. Norman has now lost the Green Goblin, the thing that gives him power beyond his wildest dreams. He's being sent back to his own world where he's going to be powerless to fight Tobey's Peter. And even if he doesn't die, Tobey is almost certainly going to throw him in jail for the atrocities that he's committed. The Free Spider-Men have won, and Norman has nothing left. Norman should be devastated, not as a result of his own actions, but for what's about to happen when he gets sent home. He shouldn't feel remorse from stabbing Tobey's Peter, because in Spider-Man 1 he was literally planning to kill that same Spider-Man even after he learned that he was a teenager. No Way Home portrays Norman Osborn as if he is an innocent man incapable of any wrongdoing, when we see in Spider-Man 1 this is not the case. He only feigned innocence to the Green Goblin's actions so that he could be seen as innocent and incapable of any wrongdoing. Norman is not a good person in Spider-Man 1, because if he was, he would seek professional help. He would try get rid of the Goblin persona. However, he doesn't do this. He willingly holds on to it because it gives him what he wants in the end. And it's for these reasons outlined in the video that I think that Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin was ruined in No Way Home, because this film did not stay true to the source material at all. But that's what I think based on evidence within the film. Let me know what you guys think down below. If you want to discuss the topic with me, consider joining the Discord server and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I think that Spider-Man No Way Home didn't do the returning characters the service they deserved, and I would be happy to make this a mini-series going over characters like Doc Ock and even the returning Spider-Man. I thank you all for watching, and as always, I will see you all in the next one.